The story begins with the Kappa family arriving at a beautiful luxury resort that neither Guy nor Priska had ever heard of before, but they were invited anyway and decided to go, because this is going to be their last trip together as a family before they divorce. Guy has always been someone who focuses on the future, while Priska lives in the past, and somewhere between those two ways of seeing the world, they lost each other. Their children, Trent and Maddox, do not know yet that their parents are planning to separate, and Guy and Priska want to give them something good to hold onto before everything changes. From the moment they arrive, the resort feels almost too perfect. The staff greets them warmly, and the manager himself comes out to welcome them. A woman hands them drinks and leads the children outside while the parents settle in. Trent immediately meets a boy named Idlib, who is the manager's nephew, and the two start exploring the resort together. Maddox spends time on the beach with her parents, and for a moment, it genuinely feels like the beginning of something wonderful. The next morning at breakfast, the family meets the other guests. At a nearby table sits Charles, a renowned surgeon who arrived with his elderly mother Agnes, his wife Crystal, a vain and restless woman, and their young daughter Cara, who is only 6 years old. Crystal flirts openly with the waiter right in front of her husband, and Charles notices, but says nothing. Then there is the Carmichael couple, Jaren and Patricia, who sits down just as Patricia begins having a violent epileptic seizure. Charles immediately rushes over and helps her through it, while Jaren watches helplessly. After breakfast, the resort manager approaches Guy and Priska and tells them about a stunning private beach just a short drive from the resort. He says he has already arranged transport and everything they need, and that it is a truly special place. Guy and Priska are a little surprised by the personal attention, but they agree, and shortly after, the whole group, including Charles and his family and the Carmichaels, all board a van together. The drive takes them past a gate marked off limits, but nobody notices, because they are all busy with their own conversations and their own worries. The driver stops at the end of a road, points toward a narrow rocky path, and tells them it leads to the beach. Then he tells them he will return at 5 o'clock, and drives away without offering to help with bags or to escort them. And something about the way he leaves feels slightly wrong, but nobody says anything. The group walks through a narrow cavern in the rock and comes out the other side onto one of the most breathtaking beaches any of them have ever seen, surrounded on all sides by enormous rocky cliffs, with no visible way out except back through the cavern. They start unpacking and settling in, and notice a man already sitting alone at the far end of the beach. He turns out to be a famous rapper named Midsize Sedan, and Maddox immediately recognizes him and tries to get his autograph, but Guy tells her to leave him alone. Sedan was there with a female companion who went swimming earlier and has not come back. The children start playing and digging in the sand, and uncover old toys and objects buried there, left behind by other children who came before them. It is a strange detail that nobody thinks too much about. Yet, then Trent goes swimming alone along the edge of the beach near a small cave, and a dead body comes floating toward him. He screams, and the adults come running. The body is pulled to shore, and Charles examines it and concludes the woman drowned recently. He immediately looks at mid-sized Sedan and accuses him, since there was no one else on the beach. Sedan is also bleeding from the nose, which Charles takes as evidence of a struggle. Sedan insists the woman simply went for a swim and never came back, but no one believes him. Before anyone can process what just happened, Agnes, Charles's elderly mother, begins having serious trouble breathing. Charles rushes to help her and does everything he can, but she dies right there on the beach, and the group stands around her body in shock, with no way to call for help, because there is no signal anywhere on the beach. Jaren immediately decides to run back through the cavern to stop the driver from leaving, but the moment he enters the narrow rocky passage, he collapses unconscious, and when he wakes up, he is back on the beach with a pounding headache, confused and disoriented. One by one, the adults try to leave through the rocks, and every single one of them blacks out and finds themselves back on the sand. They are completely and utterly trapped, with no way out, and two dead bodies already lying on the beach around them. Then something even more disturbing begins to happen. The children are changing. Trent had told the Carmichaels he was 6 years old when they arrived, but now he looks considerably older, and Maddox has visibly grown too. Priska stares at her children and cannot recognize them at first. The aging is happening so fast that within hours, the children look like they have lived years in the space of a morning. The body of Sedan's companion, pulled from the water, begins decomposing visibly in front of them. Within hours, she is nothing but bones and dust. Priska, who works as a museum curator, kneels down and examines what remains, and tells the group that this level of decomposition takes at least 7 years to occur naturally, and that is when the truth hits them all at once. Time on this beach is moving at a terrifying and unstoppable speed. Half an hour here equals roughly 1 full year of human life, and there is nothing any of them can do to slow it down. Sedan opens up to the group and reveals that he suffers from a rare blood condition that prevents his blood from clotting, which is why his nosebleeds will not stop, and why any wound he receives will not heal. The dead woman he was with suffered from multiple sclerosis, and Guy begins to notice a pattern. Every person on this beach has an underlying medical condition, and he cannot shake the feeling that this is not a coincidence. Then Priska collapses in pain. The tumor that has been growing inside her for months has been accelerating along with everything else on the beach, and it has grown from the size of a golf ball to the size of a cantaloupe in hours. Charles, despite his deteriorating mental state, pulls himself together and tells the group they need to operate right there on the sand, using the only knife they have. The problem is that on this beach, wounds heal almost instantly, so someone has to hold the incision open manually while Charles works. The group surrounds Priska and holds the wound from closing, and Charles removes the tumor. The moment they release it, the wound seals shut instantly. Priska regains consciousness, and the tumor is gone. But there is no time to feel relieved. Trent and Kara have aged into teenagers while the adults were focused on the surgery, and Kara is now visibly pregnant. The pregnancy moves at the same impossible speed as everything else on the beach, and within minutes she goes into labor. The group helps her deliver the baby, but the child does not survive, because time is moving too fast for a newborn to sustain itself without proper nutrition and care, and it dies almost immediately. And Kara, who only hours ago was a 6-year-old girl, has to experience this loss before she has even had a chance to understand what has happened to her. Charles's schizophrenia, which was showing only mild symptoms when they arrived, has been accelerating along with everything else, and he is becoming increasingly paranoid and violent. He makes a cut on Sedan's face with his knife, and when the wound heals instantly, he becomes fixated on testing this. His behavior grows more erratic and frightening by the hour. Jaren tells the group he would rather risk everything than wait to die slowly on this beach, and he swims out to sea, hoping to find another way around the cliff walls. He does not come back. Later, Maddox finds his body floating in the water. He blacked out beneath the surface and drowned, just like the woman at the beginning. Seeing her husband's body, Patricia cries out, and immediately suffers a fatal seizure, and dies on the sand. Kara, who is now a young adult, refuses to accept there is no way out. She decides to climb the cliff walls herself. She makes it higher than anyone else has gotten before and almost reaches the top, before she blacks out and falls. And she does not survive the fall. Trent, who has aged from a 6-year-old boy into a young man over the course of a single day, has to watch her die. By the time night falls, only the Kappa family is left standing. Guy is losing his eyesight, and Priska has gone nearly deaf. Charles has completely lost his grip on reality and attacks Guy, slashing at him with his knife. Priska grabs a rusty knife left behind in the sand from previous visitors and cuts Charles with it, and the rust enters his bloodstream immediately. The infection spreads through his body at the same accelerated rate as everything else on the beach, and kills him in minutes. Crystal, who has aged grotesquely and whose calcium deficiency has caused her spine to curve into a severe hunchback, chases Trent and Maddox into the cave and tries to attack them with rocks. But when she attempts to lift a large one, her bones shatter under the weight. They heal instantly, but in the wrong positions, and she dies in terrible pain in the darkness of the cave. The 4 Kappas gather on the beach for the last time. Guy can barely speak, and his thoughts are slipping away from him, but he finds the words to tell Priska that he loves her, that he cannot even remember what they were fighting about, that he is not angry anymore, and that he is just glad they could all be together. He dies with his family around him, and Priska stands for a moment before she too collapses beside him. The 2 children who arrived at this beach as a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old are left alone in the dark, watching their parents die. By morning, Trent and Maddox wake up in the sand, and they are in their 50s. They went to sleep as young adults and aged decades overnight, and they know that if they stay on this beach, they will die there, just like their parents did, just like everyone else did. But Trent remembers something. Before they left the resort, Idlib, the manager's nephew, had handed him a small coded message, and Trent had been carrying it the whole time without being able to decipher it. He takes it out and works through it, and the message reads, "My uncle does not like the coral." The 2 siblings look out at the water and spot a coral reef running along the base of the cliffs, and something clicks. The pressure that causes everyone to black out when they try to leave through the rocks does not seem to affect the coral reef itself, which sits outside the boundary of whatever force is trapping them. They also found a journal in the sand left by a previous visitor, containing names, addresses, and medical conditions of people who had been on this beach before them. The journal made it clear that others had figured things out too, but never made it out. Without hesitating, Trent and Maddox dive into the water and swim toward the coral. They find an underwater passage running through it and push through it together. At one terrifying moment, Maddox's clothing gets caught on the coral and she cannot move forward, but she pulls herself free, and they both push through and surface on the other side of the cliff walls, breathing open air for the first time since they arrived. They are out. Up on the hill above the beach, the van driver, who has been watching through binoculars this entire time, sees that Trent and Maddox went into the water and did not resurface. He picks up his phone, calls his boss, and reports that all members of Trial 73 have perished. Then he packs up his equipment and drives back to the resort. The scene cuts to a laboratory, where scientists are gathered around screens and equipment. The resort manager walks in and announces that Trial 73 is complete. He tells the team that because of the results from this group, they have successfully identified a treatment for epilepsy because Patricia did not suffer a single seizure for 8 hours on the beach, which is the equivalent of approximately 16 years of seizure-free life in the outside world. The team is satisfied, and the resort manager reminds everyone that because of what they do on this beach, they have been able to help millions of people. What the scientists do not know yet is that Trent and Maddox are alive. The two siblings emerge from the water on the other side of the cliffs, soaking and exhausted and aged into their 50s, but alive. So, what did you think about this story? Tell me in the comments below. And if this recap moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.